I am so pumped for this conversation. I've asked my beautiful friend Kristy Gray to come and join me to talk all things astrology and business and astrostrategy and all the fun things. So I'm so grateful that you've set aside this time to come and join us today. So thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Christine. I just love talking to you and your energy. And I don't want to be super biased, but I just love Virgo energy. Like, it's like on point. It is like, I'm here to get shit done. I'm here to like use my voice and change the world. And I just am like, every time I'm around you, I'm like, I just want to have a really good time with you because you're just fun.
I feel exactly the same way about you, honestly. Like after having you along for the Love What You Do collective event was so much fun, and we could have honestly kept talking till midnight and everyone in the crowd would have been just like, okay, we're ready for bed. But we would just like keep going. And there's so much that we can talk about when it comes to astronomy, right? Like astrology, right? So there's just, it's like literally endless. So I guess like to get started, for those who are living under a rock and don't know who you are, can you share with us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your journey so far?
Yeah. So hello, everybody. I am Kristy and I'm a life strategist and an astrologer. And I suppose I'll take you back to like why I'm so passionate about people and human behavior and paint a bit of a picture for you. So I spent 10 years in the corporate industry in learning and development. So I worked in the beauty industry and I kind of fell into the beauty industry in my early 20s, and learning and development was something I stumbled on quite by accident. It was one of those pivotal moments in my life where I had a state manager ask me to apply for a role, and I didn't think I was ready for it. But I always think they're the times you're actually ready is when you don't think you're ready. And I started my L&D career. And so I had no schooling qualifications or tertiary education in that zone of genius. And so I ended up studying training and assessment, and I had a lot of support around me in that role, just helping me to really understand as human beings why we do what we do. I had lots of exposure to leadership training and management training, any type of like personality profiling, like disc profiling, Edward de Bono's work. There was a lot of stuff I did with that in my career, which was amazing. And I think this is where I really started to shine, was like understanding people and why they do what they do. Now, it's so interesting though, because I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I loved the beauty industry. Like I loved lipstick and powder. I still do. There's something kind of magical about it, but I also think I was so captivated by the beauty industry because when you empower somebody to look and feel their best on the outside, it changes how they feel about themselves on the inside. But that was where I really, like, even telling you this now, Christine, that gives me goosebumps telling you, like, I think beauty on the outside is only the beginning, but it's how you make somebody feel on the inside. That's like where the magic happens. And so I kept following those breadcrumbs. I ended up moving to Sephora and helped to open Sephora in Australia. And that was like a massive learning opportunity for me because it was essentially like a startup. We ran that business like a startup because it was so new to the country. And so I was only with Sephora less than 4 years, but most of my growth as a human being happened in that time frame because at one stage I was looking after the country solo, and that was including new store rollouts, being a part of the head office team and the leadership team, developing programs and adaptations to everything for this country. And I kept coming to this point in my life where I was like, is this it? And this happened for me at Sephora, but this was like the third time it had happened where I got to this moment where I chased this new title, I'd moved to this new city, and I was like, there must be something more to my life. And I had just worked myself to the bone, and I had intense adrenal fatigue. I was living in Sydney. I had this like salary that I'd been chasing for forever. I had this title that I'd chased forever. I was working with like the most prestigious beauty brand in Australia with over 150 global beauty brands. And I was like, I was miserable. And so I was like, I actually quit my job out of necessity because I had one of those sliding doors moments. I'm sure you've had some of those where I was offered a promotion and a pay increase. And at the same day, I quit my job because I was like, if I don't take the leap today, I'm never going to find out who Kristy is without all of these accolades surrounding her. And so I moved back to the Gold Coast, and I'd been studying in the background, trying to really find what my passion was. Like, I'd studied nutrition and fitness, and I was finishing up my life coaching certification. And I was like, you know what? I think I can use my L&D career to help me to become a really incredible coach. But I suppose the thing is, and I'd love to know your thoughts actually as well, is I found the coaching industry quite ancestral. Like, it was a bit of a cult when I studied. And I just was like, I want to be able to do more than just be a life coach. And so that's when I just kept following those breadcrumbs, and I ended up like falling in love with astrology, to kind of cut that long story a little bit shorter. And I think that for me is where I am 100% obsessed, because I can look at your natal chart and it's a really easy way for me to build immediacy with you really quickly, because I can look at your chart and within 2 minutes I know what's your purpose, how do you communicate, what's your love language, how can I share information to you that's going to land. And so it's actually a really sneaky way to build engagement with another human being.
So good. And it actually, even just you sharing all of that, it makes total sense why we get along, because we have so many similarities. Like, I have also worked in the beauty industry, also worked in learning and development, like this, have studied EDISC coaching. Like, it's so interesting. We have so many different correlations. It's crazy, just with you sharing that. But you're right. Like, it's so many times we do have those sliding door moments where you've got to make or break that decision. And I think we also, like, I resonate big because obviously I'm a Virgo too, where we put all of ourselves into something, right? Like, we do overwork ourselves to that extent because we do work really hard. And I think like some of the biggest journeys that we can have is when we make those decisions and when we go all in with something. So did something specifically happen that allowed you to be able to do that leap and be able to go like, I'm all in on this?
There were two turning points. The first one was when I was in Sydney, and I remember like this went on for probably about 4 to 5 months, where I had the adrenal fatigue. I was really unwell, and my boss was also like my best friend. And so it was so challenging because my friendship circle was at work. I didn't have any support network outside of work. And I was just in this like beauty life 24/7. And I remember feeling trapped and that I had nowhere to go. And I actually reached out at the time we had like most corporations have like a support line internally. I actually thought there was something wrong with me. I wasn't sure if I was depressed or but I just was like, this is not what life should be about. And I remember making that call and talking to an awesome psychologist and just like finding out. And she was like, you're under immense stress. Because I was meditating. This is the thing, right? I was meditating. I was journaling. I was working out. But this was the other catch. I was trying to do everything. And I realized that for me to seek clarity and perspective, I had to just stop and create space. So I did the thing that nobody I recommend should do. I quit my job. I had really not a nice little nest egg behind me. And I moved back to the Gold Coast and I moved into my mum's spare room. And I thought, if I don't go in with 2 feet right now, I don't know what I'm capable of. Now, that was the start, but I did end up getting sucked back into that world because it's easy for me to do and it's easy to make money like in that world. And so I ended up taking on a part-time role as a global retail training manager for a beauty brand based on the Gold Coast, but they were rolling out in Sephora globally and they needed support from an L&D perspective. But again, I only wrote about this story today as I remember this massive turning point there. I was meant to be working part-time. I was traveling all over the world. I was meant to be working 3 days a week. All of a sudden I'm managing the Australia team as well and the US team. And I'm like, how did I get here in 6 months? Did I not just quit my job to start a business? And I just had another one of those moments where I was like, if I don't like stop this path I'm going down, I'm just going to stay in this world forever. And it doesn't mean I can't do that, but it's not a part of my purpose. So again, it was another one of these key moments where I was like, is this it? Like, what am I going to do with my life? And I think I'd love, like, I actually am interested to know, because I keep having these moments, Christine, in my life where I'll go, is this it? And it's because I pour myself so much into what I do because I love it, that sometimes I'm like, dude, you need a like life outside of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be like that, especially for Virgos, because we are like full in, right? And we do give 120 and 150% to things, when sometimes we need to just have a bit of balance. But I think it's often we get caught up in doing the similar patterns because it's meeting a need, right? It's actually allowing you, it's either fulfilling a value or it's meeting a need that is really important to you. So unless you actually transfer that to something else, you'll continue to do it a certain way. So often, like, we can get either attach our achievements or our accomplishments to our self-worth. So there's that piece, or there's another place where it's like we have a value or a core need that we're meeting, and the only way that we've known how to meet it in the past is by doing it by doing a certain pattern or strategy. So if how you met that need in the past was through high levels of achievement and getting those labels and getting those accolades or whatever it might be, then our brain goes to, well, this is how we know how to do it. So this is how we do it. So we need to actually rewire that part of the brain, but also allow ourselves to find new ways to meet that need. And I think we all, like, I'm the same, but I think it's also getting past the point of thinking that there's only one purpose, or thinking that there's, we get to choose how we want to live. We get to choose the life that we create. So what about it isn't fulfilling? So when we start to unpack that, we can then start to fulfill our needs in a whole new way.
Oh, I love that take. Yeah. I know mine is 100% associated with worthiness. It's always, for me, it's been self-esteem, because I'm a perfectionist. And I was only asked this question last week about my perfectionism, and they were like, who are you scared of disappointing? I said, I'm actually not scared of disappointing anyone but myself. And it's like, I see perfectionism as both a blessing and a curse. I love it because it means that the work that I create in this world and how I show up for people is like, I'm here to give you 110%. Which is amazing. It's a gift. Well, at the same time, it can be a real pain in the ass, because if I love something, I'm going to like do it to the nth degree.
Yeah, but then it's like, at what cost, right? So it's like, yeah, you've got to actually, and it's so funny with perfectionism. It's such a really interesting one, because it's like, it gives us what we think we want, right? Like, it's actually giving you this, we build this story up around it. It's like, well, without that, I couldn't have this. Without that, I couldn't actually achieve it at that level. When actually that's not true. You could totally achieve at that level without the busyness or the expectation that we put on ourselves in our minds that we're attaching to that behavior. You could totally do it in another way, but allow yourself to recognize that it's not about, how else will I put it? Like, perfectionism is definitely connected to our self-worth, and we're trying to be perfect without, like, disappointing ourselves, like you said. But when we allow ourselves to recognize that you are worthy no matter what, we actually come back to that place of recognizing that you were already born worthy. So what are you trying to perfect?
Yeah.
What if everything was perfect?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's so right. I'm just like, I know we're going to get into astrology, but I'm just so blessed that I have so much fire in my chart, because I have an Aries moon. So even though I have these 3 key planets in Virgo, Aries moon as a placement is like, I'm actually, I've had to learn how to be vulnerable. It's not necessarily a strength of mine. It's something.
I'm there too.
And so I can be a little bit closed off at times, depending on what it is. Or if I speak about something that's quite vulnerable, I speak to it from a real practical sense. Like, I've already worked through it. I've got a solution, so it's okay. But what Aries does, oh yeah, you're obviously the same.
Yeah.
Okay, which is, I'm glad that I'm not alone. And when you have an Aries moon, you seek action and independence under stress. So I actually love this, because even though I'm here sharing with everybody that I'm a perfectionist, I actually feel blessed that I'm not a perfectionist that sits in procrastination, waiting for things to be perfect. I actually take action and I will perfect it later, but I probably try to show up as the perfect person, which I'm actually imperfectly perfect. And I know that, but it's just there at the back of my subconscious. Thanks.
So right. Like we know it, but we don't know it. Like it's just something, there's like a disconnect there. And I can totally get what you're saying. So I feel exactly the same way that, yeah, I'm the same. Like if I learn the vulnerability element, but if I can share it in a practical way that's going to support somebody else, and I will share it. But if I'm in it, I'm not, like, there's that element of like, I don't want to share that rawness because I don't feel like it serves anybody yet. Right. It's so interesting how we work. Crazy.
This is why I'm obsessed with like human behavior, the mind, and astrology, because it's like whether you use a natal chart or human design, or you do a disc profile, Enneagram, whatever it is, you can find out something about you and validate it, and then you're like, oh, this is why I do what I do. Like, it's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's dive into astrology. So firstly, share with us, what is it about astrology that you just absolutely love?
Yeah, I love, so there's an infinite amount of combinations in a natal chart. So no two people are the same. So I can even look at a natal chart, two natal charts of twins, and they are different. Even if they're a few minutes apart. Yeah, it's amazing. And so what I love so much about astrology is, this is the other part to it, is there's no end goal with it. So everything else I've studied, you can kind of get to this point and master it. And you're like, oh yeah, I've got this. With astrology, I can be studying this for the rest of my life and I will still learn something new every single day. And the reason why is because there are an infinite amount of combinations in a natal chart. No two people are the same, but everything in astrology is cyclic. So even though we have a natal chart, which will show us where all the planets, zodiac signs, and where they're placed on your natal chart, and the houses are where you were born, you also have a progress chart, which is like, think of it like the flavor of the season that you're in. A progress chart moves very slowly. So it kind of can give me like the decade or the season that you're currently in your life. And then you have current transits. And because everything is ever moving, what you might get activated today could be quite different tomorrow. So some of those slower moving planets, you might find that you've got an activation taking place. It could be, over a few month period, where some of these faster moving ones, like the sun and the moon, like that's why one day you can feel amazing. And then the next day you're like, holy shit, like I felt on top of the world yesterday. Today I like, what's happened to me? I've got no motivation. And I think it's not just astrology, right? I see the astrology as the outer world, what's happening energetically, but there's stuff that contributes to how we feel in our inner world. So it could be, as women, we're cyclic too. Our hormones are ever changing. We have a cycle, like depending on what food we're eating, what environment we're in, right? And so I think that's why I'm obsessed with astrology, because if you can get a little bit of a handle on what's happening for you, either as an individual, like who are you? Who are you meant to be? What gifts and superpowers do you have that you need to bring into this world? And then how can you use that information as a superpower and then use it in conjunction with the world or the energy that's happening around you, so that you are essentially getting the biggest bang for your buck. And the reason why is because I spent so long going around in circles in my corporate career is this it? Now, when these moments come now, because they still come, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for anyone and say that I don't have these moments, because I do. I'm always like, can I do more to change the world? Like, all that stuff. But as soon as I feel that uncertainty creep in, I go to my chart. And like in the weekend, I'm having one of these moments of transformation at the moment. I've been like busting through some massive money blocks. I have been like up leveling in my business. I'm about to make some more investments. So with any of that energy work, it takes work. And I actually don't go back to the transits and the progress chart, which a lot of people tend to go to. They'll go, oh, what's happening for me right now? I actually go back to my natal chart. And this is what I always say with the clients I work with. Your natal chart unlocks everything about who you are. And so like for me in the weekend, I went back to it and I was like, okay, let's have a deeper look. Let's keep going back and peeling these layers. And I think that's why I'm so obsessed with it, because I know my natal chart inside and out. I've been studying this professionally for 3 years now, but every single time I look at my natal chart and I look at how the planets are talking with one another, what's aspecting each other, I learn something new, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, that's super wild. That's so awesome. So awesome. So I would love for you to share with us the impact that it has on the clients that you do work with. So you do work with a lot of business women. So I'd love for you to share how that then impacts their business. Like what things are they looking for? What type of advice are you giving based on their natal chart?
Yeah. I love this question because I think I said to you when we first connected, I was like, we're all secretly narcissistic. Like, it's so interesting. We like come in and we're like wanting to know when's the right time to launch something. I get that a lot at the moment. Like I'm thinking of either pivoting in my business or I'm thinking of launching something, and somebody's either seeking a time frame or validation, which I think is rad because that's what we can use astrology for. It's like, okay, I can tell you when's a good time to launch if you've got any lucky days on the horizon, like, and what's the time window that you can work in. We can use that. Yeah, it's rad. It's so good. Like I'm working with a 6-figure business coach at the moment who's she wants to jump into a 7-figure arena. And so, but she's also pivoting. Like it gives me goosebumps to tell you, it's massive. Like, and where she's moving to is like so awesome. So she took a leap of faith with me because she'd invested in all these amazing coaches that were in their masculine, and they gave her all these skills and tools and resources, which is rad. But she's also really smart. And she's like, got to a point where she's like, I know like how to run a business. Like I know how to do all that. She's like, I need to tap into my intuition and my feminine energy. So she's like, I saw what you're doing. And I was like, I need to do that. And so I love that. But then this is the other interesting thing is that we're actually looking at her natal chart and we're going, okay, these are where your superpowers lie, which is like connection and communication with others. You know, how can you use your business skills and capabilities, but then integrate that into the service offerings that you want to offer, so that you can then blend the two of the feminine and the masculine, so that you're giving a real high touch service, but completely unique to you. And so what I end up doing is actually helping people understand more about who they are. And I think the biggest thing I always say is I'm not psychic, because I think a lot of people think that is if I'm doing something like doing this work, I must not be able to predict their future. I can't. Astrology is free will. Like I have some people come to me and I think that I'm lucky, like 98% of the women I work with are incredible. I have a couple of people that might book a session because they're like desperate. And I'm like, I can give you insight, but you're going to still have to do the work, you know? And so, because astrology is free will. And so I think that that's what I love, is it's so unique, is I can give you insights into what you can do to get an edge in your business. So that, and then the answer I always get from that is, you're actually giving me information and validating me of what I intuitively already know.
Absolutely. I so agree with you that often we just need that permission, right? Like we just need that validation that what we're feeling or what we're telling ourselves is the right move. And yet we already know it if we just don't trust it. It's so fascinating.
Oh, and I do it too. Like, I think that's part of the human experience, is sometimes I think that's why, whether we like do a personality quiz online, or whether we go see a psychic, or we hire a coach, or whatever it is, we're looking and seeking that permission slip. And so astrology is a pretty cool way to do that, because I think this is why it's becoming so big again. There's always a resurgence with astrology. Like the last one was like 20 odd years ago. I love it at the moment because I'm like tapping into it at this rad time, but it's your natal chart. So it's not like I'm like pulling it out of thin air. Like it's your chart, which is rad.
So good. And so we have just stepped into a brand new astrological year. So I'd love for you to share with us, what's the rest of 2020? What's the expectation, or what's the way that what you've taken out of what the charts are telling you now about the new astrological year?
Yeah. So do you know what? I've been waiting for this time frame for most of 2020.
I've been like watching the calendar. Are we at the 21st yet? Like, hurry up.
Seriously, like, because it's so interesting, because I love online, because I connect with so many people, but I also see so much spiritual bypassing happening online as well. Like, there was this time in December called the Great Conjunction, which was the 21st of December, and it's when Saturn and Jupiter met, and it was like this really auspicious moment, which I love. It was great, but everybody online was talking about the day to manifest all your dreams and desires, and I always have two thoughts on that. Why do you need to wait for an auspicious moment to make your dreams a reality? Like, if you want to do that, do it today, right?
Yeah. But maybe that's like us being Virgo, like, just do it already.
Which is such a Virgo thing. I said this to somebody in a membership I had, and she was just like not having a bar of that. She was like, this is the best moment. I was like, yeah, well, do it today. Why not, right? Sometimes you need a great Virgo to tell you how it is.
Totally.
I tell myself that anyway. But this is the other thing, that when you're working with energy that's cyclic, it's ever moving, that energy I knew was going to linger right around till the start of the astrological new year, which was March. So this is why you can't wait for these auspicious moments. Like, yeah, I could give you a lucky day, but use that to your advantage to actually help you to bring something to the forefront. But you can't discount all those gorgeous action steps that you take along the way. And so 2020 as a year was, we had a lot of planets retrograding in Capricorn. Capricorn is a very responsible, dedicated energy, but because they're retrograding, it was more, rather than external growth, it was internal growth. So that's why the year felt quite heavy for a lot of us. We were either the victim or the victor, right? And so I think a lot of us were either doing work as an individual or as a collective. With this beautiful new year, I don't think I've ever been so excited for Aries season and astrological new year. Is we've got so much beautiful Aquarius energy for the next 200 years. So if you are, there's two things that I want to highlight in regards to how can you use the energy of this year to your advantage. Well, first up, let's talk about Aquarius. Aquarius is the second to last sign of the zodiac. It represents humanity and technology. It's all about blue sky thinking outside of the box, because it's an air sign, it's a fixed air sign. And our Aquarius guiding principle is I know. But then it's kind of in brackets, I don't know. So what does that mean? Well, how can you tap into blue sky thinking and creativity to innovate in your business so that you not only can do something differently that nobody else is doing, that is unique to you, and that you're being authentic and you're really standing in your power, while at the same time having the courage to carve your own path. Like,
fire. So good.
Like, this is like this energy this year. It's like, and what I love about Aquarius energy is that it also represents humanity. So it's like, okay, I'm here to carve my own path, but I also am going to bring everybody that's standing next to me with me on this journey. So it's like making sure that you don't leave anyone else behind. So it's like, I'm going to empower everybody that adds value to my life and vice versa. And like, we're going on this journey together. And so like, even if I think about how I currently do business, I'm already thinking of ways like, how can I give back more, especially to people that might be disadvantaged? Like, because I'm a person of privilege. How can I like do things differently and then also stand in my power while doing them? And then, yeah, it's cool. It's good energy. Hey.
Yeah, so good. So good. And I think like, you're so right. Like, that last year was that awareness, and everything was brought up for so many people that we had to do the self-work in every single element, right? Like, you were either shut in and locked down where you had to actually be alone with yourself, right? And then there was all the different elements of different ways that we were shone a light on things that were incongruent with where humanity is about to go. And I think it's allowing us to go, you know what, like, we need to do the work on whether it's racism or whether it is the way that we show up in the world, the way that we lead, like the way that we take care of the environment. Like, every piece we shone a light on last year that was just in such a massive way that no one could hide from it. And it kind of like set us up right for this brand new Aries energy.
Ah, Totally. It's so interesting. Like I won't go down a massive rabbit hole on this, but like even with coronavirus happening, like there were massive aspects like with Uranus, and Uranus rules the respiratory system, and like you can track back the same aspect to the Spanish flu. Like it's wild. Yeah. Trump's presidency coming to an end, I knew that we had Mars retrograding. Mars is the planet of action and how we assert ourselves. It's also our lust for life. Like Mars being in retrograde, you could, any astrologer would have told you that it was going to be detrimental. I thought he would have stayed in presidency. Like I actually thought that, because not that I am aligned to that, and that he doesn't, I suppose his political views do not match mine. However, it was just so interesting to watch how that came to fruition and how he refused to step down. So even though he didn't win, right? And so this was some of the stuff that was happening astrologically. And like there were times even, and I shared this at the event, where people were really like screaming, it felt like online, like trying to be heard. And it was like that Jupiter energy was massive at times. And I was like, you just couldn't hide from it last year. It was like everybody was doing the work, but I think there's still a whole lot of work to be done. And so this is why we're now getting really blessed with this Aquarius energy, because it's like, hang on a minute, you've got to do the work, but so is everybody else in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, like it's a total rabbit hole. You could go down every avenue, right? And literally find evidence or validation in so many different spaces. So we let's not go down that avenue. But I would love to know, how do you now currently utilize astrology in your life every day, in your business every day?
Yeah. So it's so funny because how I manage my life is how I've been doing it the last 3 years, which I've finally launched that as a service in my business, which is so bizarre that I was running my life that way. And I was like, why am I not offering this to other people? But I think a lot of it had to do with getting out of my own way, because I'm so practical. And, you know, I've spent so long in this real practical philosophy and psychology world that I was like, do I really want to do I want to go all in with astrology, right? Am I ready to do that? But the thing I love the most is like with any type of astrology software, you can cast a time map, and a time map gives you an indication of what is the greatest planetary influence that's happening in your life based on your natal charts. And so how I manage my life with astrology is I have a time map at all times. I like looking at it not just on a 12-month basis, but also on a 3-month basis, because I think what can happen is when you look at 12 months, it's like when you set 12 months goals, hey? It's like you look at it and it just feels so far away. And it's like, but if I'm feeling a certain way right now, like, because normally let's be honest, we look to things when things aren't exactly how we expect them to be, right? And so just looking at a 3 months, for me, a 3 months is just really practical. And so what I do is I always look at not just the 3 months, like what energy is surrounding me astrologically, as I try to pull out, because some of us sometimes might have like, 10, 12, 15 aspects. And it's like, well, where do I focus on? And so from that, I'll pull out the weightiest aspects. So your top 3, I call them like your top 3 priorities. And think about, like with astrology, right? Every planet is an archetype and it represents something. So at the moment, for example, I have Pluto square Pluto, and it's shit. Pluto is a planet of transformation. It's squaring Pluto in my chart, which is, and a square is challenging. It means you've got to build resilience. It's not bad. It just means you've got work to do. And so what that means is I have to discard old habits and things that are no longer serving me. And it's the perfect opportunity, even though it's like the butterfly emerging from the cocoon, right? You've got to go through the transformation to be rewarded with the magic on the other side. But you're not going to get there without doing the work. So,
yeah, there is no, I don't believe that there's any rule without that work, for sure. And I think that we often want to bypass that, right? Like we want to bypass the whole hard piece that goes with the transformation. Like without that resilience, I mean, resilience can't be built without that, what's the word? Contrast. for lack of a better word. And I love that. I love the analogy that you use around the butterfly. Like I love it. And I've shared that on the podcast before, that for the butterfly to actually be able to fly, it needed to go through a transformation, and it needed the resistance of pushing out of the cocoon for the wings to be strong enough to be able to fly. And I just love that analogy of like what you grow through what you go through, and you can't bypass that. It literally has to, that resistance has to be there to create that growth, right?
Oh, totally. And, you know, if I think of all the times that, because I've had more than one rock bottom, I've had a few now. And I always think that those rock bottoms are there as this incredible learning opportunity. And I've actually grown to like enjoy and relish. And my rock bottoms, or also I call them my magic dark, right? That's like the calm before the storm. And you grow as a person. And then when you are through it, right, on the other side, and you've gone through the stages of change and you have let go of the emotion, you can actually go, wow, like I got through that and I'm a better person because of that.
Yeah. And I often like to remind business owners of like the fact that you got through last year is a strength, right? And so often we doubt our abilities because we don't take the time to actually acknowledge how far we've come, right? Like you getting to where you are right now in your business hasn't happened because of luck. It didn't happen because your stars were aligned. It literally was all the pieces together, right? It was all the hard work. It was the challenges. It was those times when you thought it wouldn't work. Like it's all of that mixed together, plus having astrology to kind of back you up and support you and validate you, at least allows you to have that awareness in the darker times or in the challenging times to be like, you know, push yourself through or guide yourself with a new awareness. Has there been, I'd love to you to share, there's been a time for you that's happened where you look towards your chart to get that awareness, or whether you've actually had that happen with a client where they've been in that situation, you've actually given them some insight to why they would be feeling that?
Yeah. So I'll give you two examples for this. So like last year was a big business year for me. It was all about restructuring my daily routines, growing my business. Like it was a real hanging in there year because I knew that I wanted to like try so many different things to see what was really how I wanted to run my business longer term. And so using astrology, I knew all year I had 6 house activations. 6th house is a Virgo house. It represents day jobs, daily routines, and work, and also health. So I pretty much biohacked my way through 2020, but I knew that. Now, the reason I share that is because everybody is always up me because I'm single. And they're like, Kristy, you're single. What's happening in your life? Are you dating? And I was like, I've got 6 house activations. Like, I don't get 7th house activations till 2021. Give a girl a break. But it was kind of good because I actually didn't even feel like dating last year. And so just knowing that I would have the partnerships house lit up this year, and like it almost gives me this beautiful opportunity to breathe, because I think sometimes societal expectations are, as we have the 6, the 7-figure business or whatever that looks like for you. We have the perfect family, we own the house, all of this. And I was like, that's not my reality right now. So that's one way you can use astrology, just knowing what activations are taking place. And it makes it a little bit easier to know where to expend your energy.
Oh.
Yeah, it is. It's cool. And then I've got a client I'm working with at the moment, and she's incredible. And she has her PhD in post-traumatic growth and creativity. And she's at a place where what she's doing is really good, but she also knows she's here to do so much more. So we use astrology so that it's like, so she knows where to focus her energy and attention, because she already has an awesome business. She could keep growing that, but I know it's not what she wants to do. So it's like we're using the breadcrumbs and the time we've been given, because she's got this window of time right now where she has to go inwards and actually work out what her signature offering is. So it's awesome because I can then weave like that side of business into it. It's not all woo when you come to me. I'm like now helping her craft her signature offer based on her superpowers. And we just use astrology as the methodology to help her get there.
So cool. So awesome. Oh my goodness. Is that what you call the Astro strategy, or is that different?
Yeah. So Astro strategy is like, it's become my baby, because as I said to you before, that's how I've run my life the last 3 years. Like my astrology tutor used to do a time map for me, and she's been doing them for years. I just do my own now. And that I find is good because, and the reason I've set it up the way I have, because what I found is last year, a lot of people came to me for one-off astrology sessions, and then they ended up booking more. So they loved it. And then I'd see them in like 8 weeks again, and they're wanting to learn either more about their chart. And then they got to this place where they're like, I want to book in again, but what should I book? And I was like, how can I make this easier for women in business specifically? And so what I've done is I've almost taken what I was doing anyway, but made it more of a strategy, because I also found is people don't just want the insight on their natal chart. They actually want to go, okay, well, where can I play to win moving forward? And so I've paced out the sessions quarterly. So it gives them 12 weeks to integrate, and then we revisit. If they want support in between, they have that option to upgrade their service. But it's just good because it's like, okay, here we're going, we're meeting, we're going all in for 60 minutes. This is where you can play to win, and you've got 12 weeks to do it. And then we're going to come back and we need to get you to that next level.
Love it. Love it. So good. Oh, awesome. I really want to talk to you about the new moon and the full moon, because I find that it's so interesting how I find like the full moon really affects me. And I find that it impacts my business, and it impacts how I, the energy levels and things like that, and like different emotions and stuff. But then the new moon doesn't necessarily affect me as much. I don't know whether that has anything to do with my chart, but I wanted you to share what the impact is on, like, obviously we're very cyclic beings, and that's why we're affected by the moon. But I want you to share with us, like, how should we use the energy of the moon, and why do you think it affects us so?
Yeah. Oh, I love working with new and full moon, but not how like a lot of people traditionally do. I use it as chicken points in our life. So, and think of the moon. So the moon is a luminary. It's actually not a planet. And it's like such a beautiful placement even in your chart, because the moon is feminine in your natal chart. It represents safety and security and our emotions. So you just even knowing that, you're like, oh, okay, right? So at a new moon, it's this beautiful time. It's like a new beginning to manifest, dream. Whereas when it's a full moon, it's a time of like letting go, releasing, and surrendering. And if you think about like that's, I remember growing up, like I remember mum always saying to me, like at a full moon, all the crazy people come out. Sounds terrible saying that, but it's like true. It's because the full moon it affects our tides of the ocean. It helps with harvesting. Like our moon's energy is incredible. And so you can imagine like at a full moon, when it's like at its brightest and it's most illuminated, because it's 100%, how that energy is actually affecting us human beings on planet Earth. I find that people are definitely affected more from the full moon than the new moon. It also depends too of what the zodiac sign the moon is residing in. Some people will find, depending on what's in their chart, like it might be a water full moon. So it might be like a Pisces full moon. Our water signs are feeling signs. They're emotional. They're very intuitive. So like at a full moon, that's a water sign, like you may find that you're more energetically charged or emotional than say a fire full moon, which could be like a Leo full moon, where you're like fire energy is all about taking action, and it's kinesthetic. So it's like doing things. So at a fire full moon, might be like, yeah, like I'm here to get stuff done. So that's how it can affect us. And I think just knowing, like putting in your diary, I have a 2021 astrological calendar that you can purchase on my website. Like I use that at the beginning of each year, and I map out all my new and full moon dates for the year along with all the retrogrades. And the reason why is because just having that in your diary, knowing it's coming up, like Mercury retrograde, I know we haven't spoken about that, but never launch anything in that time. And so if you've got that marked down in your calendar already, it just makes it easier to plan with your marketing calendar.
Yeah, awesome. Love it. So practical. So share with us, so let's dive into Mercury, hey? So talk to us about the difference between Mercury and Mercury retrograde, because I know you love talking about Mercury and the impact that it has on communication. So share with us the differences and why we need to be aware of Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, so Mercury is the planet of communication. It's our intellect and how we synthesize information. And so I'm obsessed with Mercury. Everything in astrology too has beautiful parallels to Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, Mercury is messenger of the gods, which I just love because it is. And so, well, what does that represent as an archetype? It's everything around communication. So Mercury is a planet. Like if you can check out where Mercury is in your natal chart, it's going to actually help you understand how you communicate and also how you synthesize information, how other people may receive you too. Like my Mercury is in Virgo. So again, this is why when I communicate, it's really practical. I like to know how things work and I have to understand them. You'll never catch me talking about something if I don't understand it. Like if I don't understand it, I'll probably write it off, which can be a little dismissive at times because I need to understand it first. And so that's what Mercury represents in our chart. And I think like the basis of any great relationship, it comes down to communication. So that's why it's so important. Now, retrograde in astrology means going backwards, but the planet doesn't actually go backwards, but it puts off an energy like it does. So Mercury retrograde happens this year. It's retrograding in all air signs. So not only does it represent communication going haywire, it also is an air sign. So it means that your communication between others could also go haywire as well. So what I say is with any retrograde periods, they are timed. So 2 to 3 weeks, even a little bit longer, there's normally a shadow period, is block out time to reflect, review, and reassess. That's what the and retrograde means. So I wouldn't be necessarily launching a new program or signing any contracts without double checking everything. Double check every single email that you send because you quite possibly will make a mistake. Even like take a breath when communicating with other people, especially if you're a coach or if you're working with people, because you may find that you might communicate something that could be misinterpreted. That's what Mercury does. And so it doesn't mean that you should stop your life, right? And not take a chance. Just be mindful that you have to double check everything. And you also may not get the result that you seek. That's why I say don't launch in that time, because you might just be a little disappointed with the result because other people are going through what we're going through it all together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so interesting. And it's always the way, like, but then I feel like Mercury gets a bad rep because when things go wrong, people are like, oh, Mercury must be retrograde.
All I'm going to say to anyone listening is don't blame you can't blame Mercury on everything. Take some accountability.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that goes across everything, right? Like we can do as many personality tests as we like, we can do as many natal chart readings as we like, but it comes down to, like you said, it's all free will. And I think I'm so mindful of being mindful that please don't put yourself into a box, meaning you can't do anything else. Just because your star sign says this about you doesn't mean that, and I think that's one of the other clear things that I think the way that you share the natal chart is the interesting piece of like, just because your star sign is something, and there was elements of mine that just didn't make sense. And it was so fascinating for when you share different elements of different star signs in my chart and how that then impacts me. And that's why when I read some of the, if you read your horoscope, some of it just didn't land. And I'd be like, why? And it's actually, and then someone like the Libra actually made much more sense because I'm on the cusp and then there's other elements that play into my chart. It was so fascinating with those pieces as well, I think, which is really cool. But I think it's being mindful that I believe that it doesn't matter what chart or whatever it is that you read, that you take what you can from it, but still allow yourself to fully express what you want to express and go after what you want to go after. You don't have to put yourself into a box. I think that's all you can achieve.
Yes. I can't agree with you more, Christine. Like I cannot agree with you more. And I teach a lot on the psychology behind each zodiac sign because there's a high vibrational state and a low vibrational state. And it's so important that you can be both a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. You have to learn how to integrate the two, because as I said before, perfectionism, which is the low vibrational state of Virgo, can also be your superpower. So you can't just bypass something. Don't stick yourself in a box. Don't just seek validation with what, your favorite astrologers got online. Is like, know that you can be that archetype, but also be more than that.
Love it. I love it how you just put that. That was awesome. So good. Okay, so last couple of little questions I have for you. Firstly, what would you like people to know about astrology that maybe they don't know just yet?
Oh, I love that question. That you are every single zodiac sign. Some just are more in their fullest expression than others, because even if you don't have a planet in a particular house, there'll still be a zodiac sign that rules that house. And so you are actually every single zodiac sign, which is pretty rad.
Yeah, that's so cool. So cool. Amazing. Amazing. And so if you had someone come to you and you only had a few minutes to share with them some top advice, and they were wanting to know how to take their business to the next level, what advice would you give them?
Yep. I would say use your natal chart and focus on fine-tuning your superpowers, which lie in your primary archetypes, which your primary archetypes are your sun, your moon, and your ascendant. Your sun sign is related to life goals, and you want to lean into the positive expression of all the attributes of that sign. That's going to help you to get to where you need to go. Your moon is how you show up emotionally, because it's how we seek safety and security in the world. That's going to actually help you to understand more about how emotional you are, whether not at all or over the top, but also how you connect with other people, because that's a really integral part, is connection with human beings. And then your ascendant, which is related to purpose and joy. When you're finding that there's moments in your life that you want to give up, and like business is hard, or you're like not sure on the direction to take, your ascendant will help to give you some insight into that. And so when you combine the three together, that's when you can really start using your superpowers as a strength. And that will actually help to catapult your business if you know those inside and out.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. So good. Okay. So for people who this is their first experience of you, what's the first thing they should book, or should we go straight to Astrostrategy?
Yeah, look, I always think it depends on what the person wants to get out of the session, because with an astrology session, I'm there to give you information for an hour. I always pre-warn anyone that just books an astrology unlocked session. I shouldn't say just, I hate using that word. Anybody that books an astrology unlocked session is that you're coming to learn about your natal chart or what's on the horizon, right? It's going to be information packed. And I always say you're probably going to need some time afterwards just to go, oh, what just happened there? Especially if you're learning about astrology for the first time. Whereas I found that this year specifically is, I think because of all the internal growth we did last year, people don't just want information anymore, because I think we've had information overload. They want real strategy to coincide with it. So that's the difference between astrology and astro strategy, is that you walk away with a plan and some structure and your top 3 priorities each time. So it's giving you more time to integrate. So yeah, I think we're a little bit information fatigued. So that's why I created Astro Strategy as well, just so then it's like, oh, okay, I can actually get some support with where I'm at in my business.
Love it. Awesome. Awesome. And so where can people find you? Where can people follow you?
Yeah, so you can find me at kristygray.com. And I always hang out on the gram. I'm always there. And so, which is Kristy Gray __. I should be pretty easy to find anyway. I've been hosting some weekly chats on Clubhouse too, which has been really fun. We've been casting some natal charts live each week, so people can find out more about who they are. I've also been hosting a really awesome room with my friend Morgan, who's based over in Canada, and we've been doing some awesome chats around like, how do you look for the money areas in your natal chart to help you to elevate your wealth mindset. So yeah.
So awesome. So cool. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. I so appreciate you, and I'm just loving everything that you're doing, and I'm sure people will come and find you. I'll make sure I put all the links in the show notes, but thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, gorgeous Virgo. Christine, you are a dream.